think it's time we jump into the league where the football players are getting paid. I mean, college football players, they're getting paid for their NIL now, but let's talk about some salaries, some contracts, some NFL players, because the season starts on Thursday, and I think this could be our last chance to really dive into some NFL futures. We could do that on Wednesday, but Brett, we're going to have a big weekend of college football, NFL lines to talk about. So I think we might as well just talk about that right here. I'm looking at some win totals personally. Is that something that interests you ever with NFL bets? Something that I'm dabbling with this year. I've dabbled with once or twice in the past, but I found three lines that I really, really was able to talk myself into.
I think win totals are fun. I think if I feel really strongly about a team, so for instance, this year it was Seattle for me, right? I felt like the market was way too high on the Rams, maybe a little bit bullish on the 49ers, who, again, led the league in injuries last year, but it wasn't like they set the world on fire when they were healthy either. So, tough to say. But again, when healthy, they were in the Super Bowl, so people think, oh, they'll have better injury luck this year. You're not going to lead the league in injuries 2 years in a row. They're going to bounce back. Well, I think Seattle probably improves a little bit as well this year. They struggled with injuries, and I bet them for the division. I think the NFC East, if you have a very strong feel on that, you could bet the division. There are some conferences and divisions, Higgins, that you're not going to want to bet, like the NFC West. I'm guessing the Chiefs are very heavy favorite, or excuse me,
The
the
AFC
AFC
West.
West. Excuse me.
Well, because you
Uh,
brought up the NFC West as
yeah,
one that's something that's competitive to talk about, and I'd agree. Being in Oregon, I think that presents me a unique opportunity because I got the Seahawks to the north of me. I have the 49ers to the south of me, so the fan mixture in Oregon can be pretty interesting. Maybe even have some Rams fans potentially because of LA. But if you're looking at it, Seattle, the line's at 10.5 wins. The Rams, it's at 10.5 wins. The 49ers, it's at 10 wins.
right.
The Cardinals, it's at 8.5 wins. And that line's at plus 100. So if you've listened to this podcast the past few episodes over the coming months, you've heard me be bullish on the Arizona Cardinals for this year. I really like what they have for their offense this year. I think J.J. Watt on one side and Chandler Jones on the other. Yes, they may be both old men, but I think combined they'll be able to do plenty of pressure with their all-pro moves that they each have. It's going to be very hard to pass protect against those guys. I like the Cardinals, and at 8.5 wins at plus 100, I really love it because I took a look at their schedule, Brett, and I could see potentially 11 wins, and it only includes them having to win one game against the Rams, one game against the 49ers, and one game against the Seahawks, which they get two opportunities against each of those teams. So it's not super heavily reliant on their division schedule. They have a easy enough schedule around them. Otherwise, I think getting to 8.5 shouldn't be hard for this Cardinals team.
Yeah, I think 8.5 is a good number. I'm not very bullish on the Cardinals. With all due respect to Cliff Kingsbury, I thought it was a weird hire when it was made, right? Like, he
Mm-hmm.
jumped up after being fired from Texas Tech. He didn't leave Texas, like, he was fired. And he was the offensive coordinator at USC, and then he gets the head coaching job at the Arizona Cardinals without coaching a down for the Trojans. And I don't think it's really worked out. I don't know if I'm a believer in whatever his air raid system is. Kyler Murray has looked like an MVP and, an unbelievable player his rookie year through the first 8 weeks. And the second 8 weeks, not so good. So, is that system or is that player or is that, injury? I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Higgins, but I've seen it now twice. And I think Kyler is special. I think DeAndre Hopkins is special. I think, to your point, we love Chan Jones. Go Cuse. Buda Baker, great player in the secondary there. JJ Watt as well, you mentioned. So they have plenty of talent, Higgin. I'm not buying into the whole picture there. But, 8.5 wins when you lay out the schedule and you see Jacksonville, you see Houston, you see Detroit on there. You start thinking, it's kind of possible.
Especially with a 17th game being added, I think this year also is a tremendous opportunity to take some looks at some win totals because it may be tough to predict some of these lines with that extra game being there, with that extra opportunity of a non division game. Some of these schedules will give some of these teams an easy extra win. Some might be a surprising extra win. It's interesting. Like, I have two other teams that I'm looking at, and one of them I'm looking at an under. The Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East, Brett, under 9 games at -120. And that's because I took a look at their schedule, and it would take them having to win all 6 of their division games, in my opinion, to eclipse that 9 and get to 10 wins. So I don't see them being able to eke out and squeeze out all 6 of those wins. I think there's going to be at least 2 losses in there. One definitely to Washington, I think, who is going to probably win that NFC East. And then you never know with the Eagles and the Giants. You never know with the weather that happens in the Northeast for some of those games later in the season. It's it's very interesting. I'm taking the under 9 for the Cowboys, but then there's another line that's set at 9 wins that I'm taking the over on, and that is the New Orleans Saints, and that's for a similar reason to my pick with the Cardinals. There a lot of those wins don't necessarily have to just rely on the division. I have the Saints potentially getting up to 11 wins, and that's with about 3 to 4 wins in their division. I didn't give them either of their victories against Tampa Bay because I don't expect them to win either of them. I think it could be a fight that maybe they could get, but I'm not going to give either of those in a prediction of what wins do I see the Saints getting in this year. I see those being 50-50 toss-ups, 45-55 toss-ups favoring Tampa Bay maybe. So maybe 11 wins when the over-under set at 9. There's a possibility of that being a push as well. So I'm taking the over 9 at +100 for the Saints. So I found 3 win totals that I like, and I might be looking a little bit more, and I might have another one for Wednesday.
Yeah, fair enough, Higgins. I guess just to give my 2 cents, not that I'm betting these right, but I would probably take the other side on the Saints bet. I not a huge believer in how this offseason went for the New Orleans Saints. Um, you know, Jameis was okay the last time he was a starting quarterback. Team went 500. Obviously, threw 30 interceptions. Not great, but threw for over, 4,000, 5,000 yards and 30 TDs as well. So there's talent with Jameis, but then you look at the Saints skill position players. Okay, Alvin Kamara, stud, absolutely. Michael Thomas on the IR right now. So then you're looking for who's their next wide receiver. Marquez Callaway had a great preseason, but I mean, we really haven't seen him since Tennessee. Since he was playing at Tennessee, that's the
Yes.
college, not for the Titans. And Traquan Smith, we've been I mean, those that play fantasy football have been waiting for Traquan Smith for 5 years now. Higgins, Deontay Harris is suspended for the first 2 games. So, I mean, you start looking for a playmaker. Adam Troutman, their starting tight end, is hurt week 1. So it's getting bleak and bleak and bleak, and I'm just not buying the Saints. But to your point, Higgins, I think there is something to be said about Sean Payton. And I think, maybe we get good Jameis. Maybe you don't get all the bad Jameis. There's some that say when you play in Bruce Arians' system, right? The no risk it, no biscuit type of thing. So I don't know. Maybe he'll be a little more risk adverse. I would fade the Saints, but that's just me. I'm a more cautious better. You're much more aggressive. You love some of these aggressive plays.
Hey, that's fair. I was able to reason out potentially 11 wins for the Saints. I think they're going to destroy the Giants when they play them. I counted that as one of the wins personally. I think it's very interesting. It'll be a very interesting season for the Saints. A lot could go right or a lot could go wrong. There's a lot of potential, but there's a lot of question there. Brett, I also took a look at the coach of the year, and I decided to put 1.5 units down on Bill Belichick at plus 1,200 to win coach of the year. And my reason being is I don't think it's going to take too much from Belichick and the Patriots for him to be able to considerably bounce back, and I'll put that in air quotes, and for him to get recognition, Bill Belichick's back. He's obviously wins coach of the year. They did so badly last year. Now they got Mac Jones. He has his quarterback. They're back. Bill Belichick, this is his fourth time being the coach of the year. He ties Don Shula. Of course. I see it happening. I see it happening. And I will say this straight up. I am someone that last year at the very end of the season made a bet against a buddy of mine that's a Patriots fan. I don't think the Patriots are going to make the playoffs. I made a bet saying that back in January. I still don't think that. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win the AFC East. Maybe the Patriots get a wild card. But Belichick, if they can go 9-8, they go 10-7, I think he wins coach of the year.
I think they need to make the playoffs to win Coach of the Year. So it's a good hedge by you, Higgins. It's a good hedge, but no, I think he's a decent name to circle for sure. It was a bad year last year, starting the first rookie week one ever for Bill Belichick. So definitely going outside the box for him. I think, you put out some other names. I don't see Arthur Smith winning it. I don't see Vic Fangio winning it. I'd be shocked if Urban Meyer was successful this year. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco is an interesting one because of the injury problems last year. So theoretically, if you're the number one most injured team in football a year ago, you're probably not going to be the number one most injured team in football the next year, which leaves plenty of opportunity for the Niners to theoretically bounce back as a healthier unit. Hopefully George Kittle plays more games. I guess 49er fans are rooting for Trey Lance, but, you'd like to see Garoppolo out there healthy. The team does pretty well when he's their starting quarterback overall. So, that's an interesting one. And Brian Flores in Miami is an interesting one that you laid out there, Higgins, because Miami and New England are really fighting for that kind of quote unquote wild card spot. I think you're right. I think it's
Yeah.
Buffalo's division. They're the class of the AFC East right now, which is crazy to think about. But Miami and New England are both interesting rosters. You can poke some holes, but then they've got some deep spots as well. New England seems like they're going to want to run the ball. Seems like Jacoby Myers could be a potential number one wideout in New England. Could just fill the Welker Amendola, heavy target underneath role as well. We'll see what happens with Mac Jones and him, but that's a guy I'm looking to explode a little bit. But meanwhile, in Miami, I love their wide receivers. You have Will Fuller, although suspended week one, Devontae Parker, and rookie Jalen Waddle, who caught passes from Tua in college. I think that's a great trio right there. And, the Jets put nothing around Sam Darnold. The Dolphins are definitely putting some talent around Tua Tagovailoa. You have some questions about the O-line, but that's okay. They have some real weapons there, Higgins.
I think you and I are on a very similar wavelength with this because I crossed out a lot of the same names you did there with Meyer, Smith, Fangio. Shanahan's a very intriguing name to me as well. That's a name that I think you could lay alongside Bill Belichick. Those two both, I think, have high opportunities. Brian Flores, you outlined a lot of reasons that a lot of people like Miami. I think Myles Gaskin is one of the sleepers in fantasy football for a lot of those leagues. He's getting a lot of talk now, so his draft is starting to bump up a little higher, though. That who knows? Brandon Staley, the coach at the top of the list, though, the Chargers coach at plus 1,000. I don't know if I'm backing that because, Brett, historically, there's something that we know with NFL quarterbacks, and it's a sophomore slump, especially when they got so much praise the year before. We saw it with Cam. We saw it with Kyler Murray. We saw it with Baker. We saw it with a lot of quarterbacks. The list goes on. So that puts a, a moment of hesitation for me on that Chargers team necessarily for a Coach of the Year prospect. Also, they performed so well last year and shocked so many people. What would it take for them to do this year for his name to be brought up in that conversation? Do they just have to do the same thing again, or do they have to exceed those expectations? That's why I'm looking at Brandon Staley. I don't necessarily like that value atop the list at plus 1,000.
I think all it would take, Higgins, for him to win would be for the Chargers to win 4:30 kickoff on that final drive in the fourth quarter instead of throwing an interception.
That's
Maybe
a
that's
great point.
all it takes. Like, I mean, how many times have we watched Phillip Rivers? And I know Phillip Rivers was the quarterback there for forever, but I mean, it feels like I have 20 years worth of memories. It's the 4:30 game. We're down to the final drive. The Chargers are driving and interception.
Yep, that is a classic Chargers trait. Absolutely. It was a trait with Rivers, it was a trait before Rivers, and it's probably going to be a trait potentially after Rivers unless Justin Herbert can break it. But Brett, let's look a little closer than the Chargers playing, which is going to be on Sunday. We got a game on Thursday, and I'm actually making a quick pick in this because I think there might be some line movement as more attention starts actually focusing on this game with it happening on Thursday. The line's been at 7.5 pretty much for the past month. It's sat at 7.5. I've seen it. I'm gonna take Tampa Bay at minus 7.5 because we have seen Dallas throughout the preseason, and they held Dak Prescott really out of all of it and did not let out a lot of information. It seems like there might be worries in terms of even how close to 100% he is by week one. I'm not confident in that. There's not a lot of assurances in that unknown for me of a quarterback coming back from as bad of an injury as he had in this situation, and a Dallas Cowboys defense that was as bad as they were last year. Especially when you look at a Bucks team that, yes, they won the Super Bowl, and there's going to be that potential hangover, as we all know. But minus 7.5 for a team that brings back all 22 of their starters from last year, has tremendous assets. Tom Brady at their quarterback again. I think the Bucks are going to win by double digits. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if that line gets closer to 8 or 8.5 by the time of our next episode on Wednesday night. So I'm taking it now. I'm just going to be safe and take the 7.5 now. Wouldn't be surprised, or sorry, I'm actually going to take it at minus 7. I forgot that. I'm taking it at minus 7 at minus 125. I bought down to the minus 7 just because I think it's going to keep going up to that 8, and minus 125 is not too big of juice for me to take.
There you go, Higgins. I like the. Oh, wait, I forgot.
I forgot I put the caveat in that I took an alternate line. I was talking
Yeah,
about the
for
7.5. I
sure.
don't mind the 7.5, but I forgot that I went and bought down to 7 before it moves to 8.
All good. Yeah, it's definitely moving in that direction. The juice in New Jersey minus 115 on the minus 7.5. So, might be safe for you to get in early. I'll probably find myself on our next pod taking that game some way, shape, or form, Higgins, because it's opening night. And, you have to have a little action on opening night in the NFL.